So, imagine for a second, what if the standard life script you were handed at birth, grow up, get a steady job, get married, start a family.
Right, the whole white picket fence thing.
Yeah, exactly. What if all of that is actually a malicious software program, like designed to strip away your fundamental freedom?
I mean, that is an incredibly aggressive premise right out of the gate. You're basically looking at the foundational building blocks of human society and, well, calling him a trap.
And that is exactly what we're exploring today on this deep dive. We're unpacking a highly provocative essay from 2007 by an author named Zhu Feng.
Titled The Life Without Marriage.
Right. And his argument is basically that traditional family structures don't just, limit your potential. They actively guarantee a lifetime of misery.
Which is a lot to take in.
It is. Now, just a quick heads up for you listening. We are putting this guy's fiercely anti-establishment ideas under the microscope just to see how his logic operates.
Yeah, we're definitely not taking sides here.
Oh, no, not at all. We aren't telling you to go cancel your wedding or, hand your parents an eviction notice.
Exactly. We're just here to map out the mechanics of this incredibly radical philosophy of absolute liberation.
Right. So to start, we have to kind of decipher the eclectic vocabulary he uses because the author pulls from all over the philosophical map.
Oh, he really does.
Yeah.
In one breath, he's talking about achieving Buddhahood or immortality. And then in the next...
He's referencing the intelligent design of the greatest creator.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. He is essentially hacking different spiritual traditions together.
Yeah.
He's mashing up Eastern concepts of enlightenment with monotheistic ideas of a creator.
Just to build this completely custom framework that justifies his rejection of the status quo.
Precisely.
Okay, let's unpack this. Why does he actually believe marriage is fundamentally a trap? I mean, he claims that the moment you get married, you lose your basic freedom.
Right, and you destroy any chance of attaining that higher spiritual state. And the interesting thing is, it isn't because of a bad partner.
Wait, really? It's not about being in a toxic relationship.
No, not at all. He argues that the institution of family itself inherently forces you to be selfish.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the mechanism here is what he calls the program of family. And his argument is economic, emotional, and psychological all at once. Just think about the reality of raising a family.
Well, you suddenly have to hoard resources for a very small, closed circle.
Exactly. If you have a child, you biologically and socially prioritize that child's survival over, say, your neighbor's child.
Yeah, you start funneling your money into a mortgage, a college fund, retirement savings.
And you are forced to conform at work just to keep that paycheck secure.
It's like a mandatory software update that overwrites your free will.
That is a perfect analogy.
It installs a selfishness bug that you literally can't uninstall as long as you remain in the system. You have to prioritize your spouse and your kids over the rest of humanity.
Which completely blocks you from loving universally or attaining any kind of broader enlightenment,
Right.
according to him. And this brings us to his central metaphor to explain the sheer force of this program. He calls it the river.
The river.
Yeah. He describes the act of getting married as sailing downstream. You aren't just making a choice, you are being carried by a massive current.
Because it's your biological imperative.
Exactly. It's biology, it's your parents' relentless expectations,
Yeah.
it's the subtle judgments of your relatives and neighbors. It is the path of least resistance.
But wait, I have a bone to pick with that metaphor. Usually, like in literature, a river flowing downstream leads to the ocean, right? Which represents vast, open freedom.
Oh, sure.
But Sifeng is arguing that this particular downstream current leads directly into a cage. He says human history proves this downstream path inevitably ends in a waterfall of pain and suffering.
Yeah, that is the ultimate tension in his philosophy. He is redefining what we consider a natural instinct as an artificial societal trap.
Oh, I see.
He argues that because downstream equals unavoidable suffering, your only logical choice is to turn the boat around and sail upstream.
And choosing not to marry is sailing upstream.
Right. You are fighting the crushing weight of societal norms every single day, which is, exhausting and incredibly isolating.
Which kind of makes you think about your own life for a second. Like, how many major life decisions do we make? Buying a house, taking a corporate job, getting married, simply because swimming against that current feels way too exhausting.
Yeah. We just go along with the expected script because fighting the biological and societal gravity is too hard.
The gravity is relentless.
He vividly describes this pressure bearing down on the spirit like huge mountains. It's the fear of loneliness, physiological demands.
The practical worry about who will care for you in your old age.
Exactly. These are powerful primitive fears that push almost everyone toward the altar.
So, if this downstream current is so biologically and socially hardwired, how does he expect an average person to suddenly start swimming upstream?
Wow.
I mean, does he offer a practical toolkit, or is this just pure theory?
Right.
Especially when it comes to the people enforcing the program the hardest, your parents.
He actually does offer a strategy, and it is a fascinating piece of rhetorical judo.
Oh.
Yeah, he advocates for maintaining filial piety. He doesn't say you should just cut your parents off entirely. However, he draws an absolute line in the sand when it comes to what he capitalizes as life, L-I-F-E.
And his method for holding that line is honestly kind of hilarious.
It really is.
He advises that if your parents are pressuring you to get married, you shouldn't just argue or yell. You give them 4 impossible conditions. You essentially say, sure, I'll get married, but only if you provide these 4 things.
What's fascinating here is the sudden whiplash in those demands.
Yeah. So condition 1, explain to me the significance and value of life. Condition 2, explain the nature and meaning of existence.
Deep existential philosophy.
Right. And then condition 3, provide me with good housing. And condition
Yeah.
4, guarantee my lifelong happiness.
It is so absurd.
You are sitting across from your parents demanding profound enlightenment like, Mom, Dad, please explain the true nature of existence. And in the exact same breath saying, oh, and also I'm going to need a really nice 3-bedroom house.
Right. It pivots from deep spirituality to a real estate transaction in a split second.
But, I mean, isn't this just him being incredibly obnoxious to his family?
He frames it as a survival tactic. By setting the bar at absolute literal perfection, he builds an impenetrable fortress around his autonomy.
Because he knows his parents cannot explain the meaning of life.
Exactly. And they certainly cannot guarantee lifelong happiness.
Yeah.
So he effectively shuts down the debate without technically ever having to say the word no.
Wow. He flips the burden of proof. He's telling them, if you want me to enter an institution that I believe is fundamentally flawed and will ruin my life, you have to prove it's flawless.
And he applies an equally ruthless logic to his peers. We all know friends and colleagues love giving unsolicited life advice.
Oh, constantly.
So for those people who try to persuade him to settle down, he demands a written pledge.
Wait, a written pledge?
He literally tells them, if I get married and face hardship, will you guarantee to bail me out and help me through the pain? Put it in writing.
That is, wow. Which entirely exposes the complete asymmetry of societal advice. Everyone wants you to conform so they feel better about their own choices.
Exactly. But absolutely no one is going to sign a legally binding contract to underwrite your future marital misery. They won't bear the consequences of your conformity.
Right. And when it comes to the general judgment of the public, like the whispers and the gossip, his dismissal is aggressively blunt. He uses this metaphor. If pigs say something is wrong with man's life, then just let them squabble.
Yeah, he doesn't just disagree with society. He views societal judgment as entirely beneath him. He's insulated himself from the guilt and the shame that usually keeps people sailing downstream.
It is a complete ideological detachment. But, you have to ask, what happens when ideology collides with biology?
Right. That is the giant elephant in the room here.
Because you can out-argue your colleagues with written pledges, and you can confuse your parents with real estate demands.
But you cannot out-argue your own physiological needs.
Exactly. How does Leffing reconcile this total rejection of marriage with the basic human desire for sex and the deep, creeping fear of loneliness?
Well, this is where his philosophy takes a very pragmatic, if unconventional turn.
Yeah.
He doesn't retreat into asceticism.
He isn't telling people to go live in a cave.
No, not at all. He states that the greatest creator designed our organs and senses for a reason. He calls the need for sex a natural necessity and bluntly says, only a fool would not have sex.
So he completely rejects celibacy, calling it abnormal.
Yes.
But he is equally critical of the modern secular alternatives. Like he shoots down the idea of random hookups or engaging with sex workers, which he refers to using the slang chickens and ducks.
And his reasoning for rejecting those alternatives is crucial. He warns that random encounters lead to disease, financial ruin, and debt.
But the ultimate consequence, the thing he fears most, is spiritual solitude, right?
Exactly. You might satisfy a physical urge for a night, but the profound, crushing loneliness remains. If you live that way, there is no one to care for you when you are sick or old.
Okay, but let's address the massive, glaring flaw in this plan. He tears down all the conventional options, no marriage, no celibacy, no random hookups. He's backed himself into a corner.
He really has.
So what is left?
Well, here's where it gets really interesting. This is where he introduces his highly specific alternative social structure, becoming a Chanyuan celestial.
A Chanyuan celestial.
Yeah, this is his utopian blueprint. To avoid the misery of the program but still satisfy the human need for deep connection and intimacy, he proposes a closed, shared belief community.
Hold on. He wants absolute personal freedom, but his grand solution is an insular community requiring absolute ideological purity.
Yeah, pretty much.
Isn't that just trading the program of family for a much stricter, almost cult-like program?
That is the defining paradox of almost every utopian philosophy. You dismantle traditional structures of control, but to maintain order in your new society of absolute freedom, you have to demand absolute conformity to the new rules.
Right.
The mechanics of his community rely entirely on this shared ideology. It is a system of free love, but exclusively within this specific group of Chanyuan celestials.
So how does that practically prevent the jealousy and the selfishness he hates so much? Because, I mean, if it's free love, human nature usually dictates that someone gets hurt.
Well, the author argues that jealousy and ethical breaches stem from a fundamental lack of trust, which is why secular society relies on legal marriage contracts.
Okay.
But his logic is that because these celestials share the exact same belief system, the exact same frequency, resonance, and life values, that friction simply ceases to exist.
So spiritual synchronization completely replaces the legal contract.
That's the theory. Because they resonate on the same spiritual frequency, they can engage in consensual relationships without the restrictive, ownership-based bindings of traditional marriage.
They don't legally own each other.
Right. But because of their shared resonance, the text claims they never hurt each other and are actually willing to lay down their lives for one another.
It's an incredible leap of faith regarding human nature. He's betting everything on the idea that if you align people perfectly on a spiritual level, the biological instinct to be jealous or possessive just vanishes.
It's a huge gamble.
But let's look at what happens when a community like this actually tries to exist in the real world. A closed system of free love and shared residence might sound mathematically perfect on paper, but it is going to violently collide with the traditional world they just walked away from.
Oh, absolutely. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the author doesn't harbor any illusions about this. He is acutely, almost painfully aware of the optics.
He predicts a massive, overwhelming backlash, doesn't he?
He does. He writes that once relatives, neighbors, and colleagues discover this casual, free love lifestyle, the Chanyuan Celestials will face immense condemnation.
They will be insulted, reviled, and met with overwhelming grief from their own families.
The imagery he uses to describe this collision is really striking. He refers to the members of his community as helpless lambs surrounded by packs of wolves.
Wow.
He envisions them being torn apart, bitten, trampled, and swallowed by the traditional moralists of the secular world.
It sounds like he's basically writing a martyr's manifesto at this point.
He absolutely is. The essay shifts from a philosophical, almost sociological critique of marriage into a full-on declaration of war against societal norms.
Right.
He is demanding a complete remolding break from the secular world. And he knows the stakes. By publicly reprimanding the bedrock institutions of family, religion, political parties, and the state, he knows he is placing a massive target on his own back.
So what does this all mean? I mean, he openly acknowledges the extreme danger of his ideas. He actually states in the text that he is prepared to die at any time for writing these things.
Yeah, he says, every day might be my last day.
Why use such extreme life or death language over a philosophy about staying single and living in a commune?
Because for him, it is the ultimate price of freedom. He is arguing that to truly escape the program, to uninstall that software of selfishness and conformity, you have to be willing to lose absolutely everything, including your life.
The wolves are always waiting on the riverbank.
Exactly. If you want to walk out of the downstream current, you have to be ready to face them.
Man, we've traced this incredible escalation in his thought process today. It starts with a very relatable feeling, that societal pressure, the nagging parents asking when you're going to settle down.
Oh, we all know that feeling.
Right. And then it escalates into handing those parents a bizarre real estate contract mixed with an existential philosophy exam.
Which is still wild to me.
Same. And it ends with a man standing on a hill, looking down at the institutions of the entire world, marveling at his own absolute conviction, effectively saying, give me liberty or give me death.
And what is truly compelling is that he finds a profound sense of peace in that extreme stance.
He really
He
does.
writes that even if his radical honesty leads to his demise right now, today, he has absolutely no regrets.
Because he feels he has lived a real life.
Precisely. In this context, a real life means an unprogrammed, unfiltered existence. He spoke his truth, he lives with magnanimity and openness, and he refused to let his fundamental humanity be overwritten by the expectations of the collective.
It forces you to take a really hard look at the invisible scripts that govern your everyday choices. We make so many decisions just to keep the peace, just to stay in the downstream current because it's comfortable.
Yeah.
From diagnosing the invisible program of marriage that funnels our resources into selfishness, to proposing this radical, isolated solution of the Chanyuan celestials, it is a wild ride of an essay.
It really highlights the core tension every person eventually has to navigate. This raises an important question. What is the right balance between security and liberty in your own life?
Right.
The downstream current of marriage, mortgages, and societal norms offers security. It offers predictability and a safety net when you fall. But it costs a degree of personal freedom.
While the upstream path of radical autonomy offers absolute freedom, but it leaves you entirely exposed to the wolves.
Exactly.
Which brings us to one final thought for you to take with you. Think back to that standard life script we talked about at the very beginning. The universal default setting we are all handed the moment we are born.
The program.
Right. If we were to somehow completely wipe the slate clean, if we could strip away every single societal expectation, every tradition, every ounce of familial pressure that tells us how we're supposed to live, what kinds of new social structures would we naturally invent from scratch?
That's a fascinating thought experiment.
How would we build a world that perfectly balances our craving for absolute personal freedom with our deep, undeniable biological need for human connection? Something to mull over as you navigate the currents of your own life.